My beloved child, pause where you are and let the noise around you become still, because what you are about to hear was not meant to pass by you unnoticed. Do not scroll away from this moment. Something hidden beneath the surface of your connection is being brought into the light, and the truth is not as simple as the fear that first entered your heart. You believed your soulmate was loyal. You trusted the quiet promises, the familiar words, the moments when their eyes seemed to say what their voice could not. Yet recently, something has felt different. A distance appeared without explanation. A silence grew where warmth once lived. Their energy shifted, and although you tried to convince yourself that nothing had changed, your spirit kept whispering that something was happening beyond what you could see. You questioned yourself before you questioned them. You wondered whether you were imagining the coldness, whether your past wounds were making you suspicious, whether you were asking for too much from someone who was simply overwhelmed. You gave them the benefit of the doubt again and again because your love did not want to accuse. Your heart wanted to protect the image of them that had once made you feel safe. But deep inside, there was a moment when you felt a sudden ache without knowing why. It came unexpectedly, perhaps late at night, perhaps while you were alone, perhaps during an ordinary hour when nothing around you seemed wrong. Yet your soul felt something your eyes had not yet witnessed. I saw that moment. Heaven saw the way you became quiet. I saw you replay conversations, searching for the exact second when their tone began to change. You remembered the delayed replies, the vague explanations, the strange interruptions, and the way they sometimes seemed emotionally absent even when they were physically present. You noticed how quickly they turned certain conversations away from themselves. You felt how carefully they chose their words, as though they were trying not to reveal more than they intended. And still, you remained patient. Still, you loved them with a softness they did not fully understand. But listen carefully, because this is where the story begins to move in a direction you did not expect. What was actually happening was not one secret, but several emotions colliding inside one person. Your soulmate was loyal to the feeling they carried for you, but they were not being honest about the battle surrounding that feeling. They were hiding pressure. They were hiding fear. They were hiding the influence of someone who had begun speaking into their confusion. And although the truth may sting, you must hear it completely before you decide what it means. There was someone around them who noticed the weakness in their certainty. This person may not have appeared threatening. They may have presented themselves as a trusted friend, a concerned relative, a colleague, or someone from the past who claimed to understand what your soulmate was going through. They did not begin by attacking your connection directly. They began with questions. Small questions. Carefully placed doubts. They asked whether your soulmate was truly happy. They asked whether you understood them. They asked whether the future with you was secure. And slowly, without appearing to do so, they created a space where uncertainty could grow. Your soulmate did not immediately turn away from you. In fact, at first, they defended you. They spoke of your kindness. They remembered the ways you stood beside them when others disappeared. They described something you once did that had never left their heart. Perhaps it was a message you sent during a difficult night, a sacrifice you made without expecting recognition, or the way you believed in them when they did not believe in themselves. Their voice changed when they spoke of that memory. Even the person listening could hear that what existed between you was not ordinary. But that person did not stop. They began to point toward every moment of distance between you. They took misunderstandings and made them look like warning signs. They took your silence and described it as indifference. They took your boundaries and called them rejection. They took your patience and suggested that it was a lack of passion. And your soulmate, already carrying fears they had never confessed, began listening more closely than they should have. Do not skip what comes next, because the most important truth is not simply that someone interfered. The deeper truth is that your soulmate allowed this voice to enter because they were terrified of losing control of their feelings for you. They had reached a point where loving you no longer felt casual. It felt dangerous to their emotional defenses. You had become capable of affecting them in ways no one else could. A single word from you could lift them. A delayed response could unsettle them. A memory of you could follow them throughout an entire day. And rather than admit the depth of this attachment, they began acting as though they needed distance. This is why their behavior became confusing. One moment they seemed close, and the next they withdrew. One day they gave you hope, and the next they made you question everything. They were not simply deciding whether they wanted you. They were struggling with what wanting you would require from them. It would require honesty. It would require vulnerability. It would require them to confront choices they had avoided for a long time. It would require them to stop pretending they could live without the connection that had already changed them. Yet there is more, and this is the part your intuition has been reaching toward. During this period of confusion, another person offered your soulmate attention. It was not necessarily love, though it may have looked like interest. It was not necessarily a full betrayal, though a boundary was crossed in the emotional shadows. This person made themselves available at the exact time your soulmate felt uncertain. They listened when your soulmate felt misunderstood. They complimented them when their confidence was low. They encouraged them to speak about the very connection they should have been discussing with you. At first, your soulmate told themselves it was harmless. They said it was only conversation. They insisted there was nothing serious behind it. But the truth is that they began using this person as an escape from the emotional intensity they felt with you. With you, their heart was exposed. With this other person, they felt in control. They could speak without risking everything. They could receive attention without facing the full weight of love. They could hide behind a version of themselves that did not have to confess how deeply you mattered. You sensed this shift before you knew its cause. Your spirit recognized that someone else had entered the space where honesty between you should have been. You may have noticed a new defensiveness. You may have heard them mention someone too casually or avoid mentioning someone altogether. You may have felt their attention dividing, not always in action, but in emotional presence. And because you had no proof, you began battling yourself. You asked whether you were being insecure. You told yourself to remain calm. You tried to love without controlling. But your peace was disturbed because loyalty is not only about physical actions. Loyalty is also about where someone carries the conversations that belong inside the relationship. It is about who receives the vulnerability that should have been offered to you. It is about whether someone protects the sacred space between two hearts when confusion arrives. Your soulmate did not fully protect that space. This is not being revealed to destroy you. It is being revealed because you are entering a season where truth must become more valuable than fantasy. You have spent too long making excuses for people because you could see their potential. You have loved the version of them they promised they would become. You have remained loyal not only to who they were, but to who you believed they could be. Yet heaven is asking you to understand that compassion does not require blindness. Forgiveness does not require pretending. And love does not ask you to abandon your own discernment. Something happened during one of those hidden conversations that changed the entire direction of this story. Your soulmate was speaking about you. Their words began cautiously, but emotion soon took over. They described a disagreement between you, perhaps one that had never been fully resolved. They explained your reaction from their perspective, leaving out the parts that would have revealed their own fear. The other person listened, then said something that seemed supportive but carried a hidden intention. They suggested that perhaps your soulmate deserved someone easier. Those words stayed in the air. For a moment, your soulmate did not answer. They imagined a life without the emotional weight of loving you. They imagined choosing someone who did not awaken their deepest fears. They imagined a relationship that demanded less transformation. And for one brief moment, they almost convinced themselves that easier meant better. But then something unexpected happened. A memory of you interrupted their thoughts. It was not a dramatic memory. It was a quiet one. Perhaps the way you once looked at them when they were trying to hide their pain. Perhaps the way you noticed something was wrong when everyone else believed their smile. Perhaps the sound of your voice saying a sentence they had carried ever since. The memory entered so suddenly that their expression changed. The other person noticed. Your soulmate became silent, and inside that silence they realized something they had been avoiding. No one else knew them the way you did. No one else had reached the hidden part of them that they had spent years protecting. No one else had made them feel both terrified and understood at the same time. The person offering them attention could make them feel desired, but you made them feel seen. There is a difference, and in that moment, they finally felt it. Do not leave now, because the revelation becomes deeper here. Your soulmate did not continue the conversation in the way the other person expected. Instead, they began defending you. They corrected several things they had allowed to be misunderstood. They admitted that you had been more patient than they deserved. They admitted that some of the distance came from their own inability to communicate. They confessed that you had tried to reach them emotionally, but they had withdrawn because your sincerity frightened them. Then they said something they had never said aloud before. They said they were afraid that if they gave themselves fully to you, you would eventually discover they were not enough. This fear was the hidden root beneath their behavior. It was why they accepted attention from a safer distance. It was why they sometimes created problems where none needed to exist. It was why they tested your love without admitting they were testing it. They were not only afraid of losing you. They were afraid that being truly loved by you would expose every part of themselves they considered unworthy. The other person became quiet because this confession revealed that your soulmate's heart had never truly moved toward them. They had been used as a hiding place, a temporary refuge from the vulnerability your connection demanded. This realization created tension. What had once seemed like innocent support began to show its true shape. The person asked your soulmate a direct question: if they matter that much, why are you talking to me instead of them? That question struck harder than any accusation. Your soulmate had no answer. In the silence that followed, they saw themselves clearly. They realized they had been asking you for loyalty while hiding their own emotional confusion. They had expected you to remain available while they sought comfort elsewhere. They had wanted the security of your love without offering the transparency that security requires. And for the first time, they felt the weight of what this could do to you if you discovered it in the wrong way. They pictured your face. They imagined you becoming quiet, not because you had nothing to say, but because the truth had broken something inside you. They imagined you questioning every tender moment. They imagined you wondering whether you had ever truly been enough. And this vision shook them because, despite their mistakes, they never wanted you to feel replaceable. You were never replaceable. But hear this with wisdom. Being irreplaceable in someone's heart does not automatically mean they have treated you correctly. Someone can love you and still act from fear. Someone can value you and still fail to protect you. Someone can remain emotionally attached to you while making choices that create pain. Love explains certain actions, but it does not excuse them. Heaven is not asking you to ignore what happened. Heaven is preparing you to see the complete truth so that your next decision comes from strength rather than panic. You may soon notice a change in your soulmate's behavior. They may become unusually reflective. They may reach out with a softer tone. They may mention a subject they once avoided. They may appear as though they are carrying words they cannot easily release. This is because the hidden conversations no longer bring them comfort. They have become a mirror. Your soulmate has begun realizing that the person who seemed to offer an easy escape was not protecting their heart. They were studying it. They were learning where your connection felt vulnerable. They were waiting for the exact opening where they could become more important. And when your soulmate finally understood this, they felt both embarrassed and alarmed. There was a moment when the other person pushed too far. They spoke about you with a disrespect your soulmate had never expected. They suggested that you were holding them back. They implied that your love was a burden. They may even have laughed at something sacred your soulmate had shared about you. That was the moment the atmosphere changed. Something protective rose inside your soulmate. The confusion disappeared for a moment, replaced by clarity. They defended you immediately. Their voice became firm. They told this person they did not understand you. They said there were things about your heart that could not be judged from a few stories told during moments of frustration. They admitted that they had spoken from confusion, not from the fullness of the truth. And when the person tried to dismiss your importance, your soulmate ended the conversation more abruptly than anyone expected. But the story did not end there. Afterward, your soulmate sat alone with everything they had done. The room felt different. The silence that once helped them avoid their emotions now forced them to face them. They opened an old message from you. They looked at words they had once read quickly and now understood differently. They remembered the times you had asked for honesty without demanding perfection. They remembered how often you had given them space, believing they would return with truth. They felt ashamed because you had been offering them a safe place, while they had been searching for safety in the wrong person. Then they began typing a message to you. They wrote several lines, erased them, and started again. They wanted to confess, but they feared that honesty would cost them the connection. They wanted to explain that nothing had happened in the way your worst fears might imagine, yet they knew something meaningful had still been crossed. They wanted to tell you that the emotional distance was never proof that they stopped caring. It was proof that they did not know how to carry the intensity of caring. They wrote, "There is something I need to tell you." Then they deleted it. They wrote, "I have not been completely honest about what has been happening." They deleted that too. Finally, they placed the phone down and covered their face with their hands. It was then that something inside them broke open. Not because they had lost you yet, but because they suddenly understood that silence could become the very thing that caused them to lose you. This is the turning point that heaven has been watching. Your soulmate is standing between two paths. One path allows them to continue hiding, offering you partial truths and hoping the situation disappears. The other path requires them to come before you without excuses, admit where they failed, and accept that you have the right to decide what happens next. Until now, fear has controlled their choices. But something has begun shifting. The false comfort has ended. The person who entered the emotional space between you revealed their intention through one final message. Your soulmate read it, and their heart dropped. It contained a statement that made them realize the conversations had not remained as private as they believed. Something they had shared about you may have been repeated. A detail may have reached someone it was never meant to reach. A misunderstanding may already be moving through people around them. And now your soulmate knows they must speak to you before the story reaches you through another voice. Stay with this moment, because what happens next may determine whether your connection is restored through truth or fractured through delay. Your soulmate has begun preparing to tell you what was actually happening. Yet the confession is more complicated than one conversation with another person. There is another detail they have not even admitted to themselves fully, a detail connected to the exact night when you felt that unexplained heaviness. On that night, they were given a choice. One person asked them to step away from you completely. Your soulmate did not say yes. But they did not immediately say no. They hesitated, and during that hesitation, something was said about you that changed their expression, stopped their breath, and forced them to realize that this person knew a private detail they had never shared. Your soulmate looked at them and asked, "How do you know that?" The answer they received revealed that someone much closer to your connection had been involved from the beginning, and when your soulmate heard the name, they understood that what had been happening was far bigger than disloyalty, far deeper than temptation, and far more personal than either of you had imagined.